Thank you, brother.
You got it?
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
How's it going?
Good.
All right. Well, my name's Donnie Jones, better known as Winger, and most of you guys are, did your mom really name you Winger? And no, she didn't. This is the wing. That's the way I was born. And it ain't no thing. It's just the wing. 1 out of 5 million babies will have a wing. And that's kind of what the wing is all about. I got the nickname in high school. A guy, if you're football fans, Keith Millard of the Minnesota Vikings. He went to my high school, and he was a big guy on campus. I was a freshman, and he was a senior. And he says, Jonesy, come on over here. He goes, let me take a look at that thing. So he came over, and he's like 6'4", and he's holding his big old hands with the wing right here. And he goes, man, I could just break that thing. And I was scared to death of him, you know. And he goes, that's what we'll call you. We'll call you Winger. And it wasn't like a bad nickname like Chicken Wing or anything. But I kind of got favored with the big guy on campus. Didn't get my head flushed down the toilet, which is what they did back then. And I did a little sprinkler dance for him and made him giggle a little bit. And I seemed to get favored with the big guy on campus. So, I was thinking this morning of how I was introduced to this group. And it's really been on my heart for many years to have a consistent Bible study of a bunch of men, and a lot of our schedules are very busy, and to have it early in the morning is the only time. And so I tried to do my part in kind of doing that, and which I'll share in a couple of minutes. But I met Bro on the RV lot, and he was one of my customers, and he was kind of planting some seeds, and I'm a believer, and he was a believer, and he said, hey, you got to come check out this No Man Left Behind at Giant RV around the corner here. And I just kind of took it with a grain of salt and stuff, and several months went by, and I was at a Bible study at Orchard Church. And one of the guys kind of heard me sharing in small groups and knew that I was going through a funk in my life. And I'm going to go out on the limb and call it as it is. It was depression that had creeped up in my Christian walk. And this autistic guy who you may know as James, anybody know James, usually sits over here. And the guy asked for my phone number and checked on me through the week, like we should do. And asked for my phone number and said, hey, Winger, just want to see how you're doing this week. And he called me the next week, and sometimes I didn't want to take his call, and I just took his call, and he invited me to this group. And I, out of respect for him, I wanted to make sure I suited up and showed up. And he didn't show up, but I showed up. And, my heart just breaks because I think, here's a guy that's autistic doing what we should do as Christian man, to reach out. And I was going through a depression at that time and I felt like I was Debbie Downer with a lot of the brothers in my group, that nobody wanted to touch me because I had that plague. And so, today I just want to step out in faith and talk about it, because I know that there may be someone who may be struggling with it today, and there is hope. There is truly hope, which I have found. And so with that, I'm going to kind of give you guys a little bio of my testimony and how what kind of went on and what's going on now. And then we're going to talk about 7 ways that we get stuck in our faith. Has anybody ever gotten a funk in their faith? Been walking with the Lord, the Lord, you're going to Bible study, and you just don't feel the presence, and you can't figure out what it is. And I think that's what kind of hit me, was this depression that hit me several months ago. I was just paralyzed, sitting in my recliner at home and crying like a little baby, not wanting to tell anyone. Suicidal thoughts, thinking of hanging myself, and didn't want to share it with anyone, didn't want to share it with my wife. Pastor hit home, nailed it right to a T, to the point that I just started crying in church, being an usher, and I'm like, what in the heck is going on? I'm serving in the church, I'm doing outreach, I'm going to convalescent homes and working with old people. I'm going to AA meetings, fishing for men, trying to get out of myself and share the hope of Christ inside of AA meetings, and doing my Bible study. What in the heck is going on? And I have a great mentor who I've had for years, who not only knows me in recovery, but also knows me as a Christian man, which is him. And I respect him a lot. Some of you guys might know as Gino. He used to go to Cornerstone he's my mentor that I've had for many years. And he called me out and he says, Winger, you're having depression right now in your recovery, and it's okay. He says, you need to seek professional help. And, but is that what we were taught? Well, the Lord will take it away from me. If I just pray harder, if I just do more works, if I just, and he says, you need to seek professional help. And so I humbled myself and I went and sought professional help. And I said, Doc, what is going on? 28 years of sobriety. My sobriety date is August 20th, 1990. That's the last time I did crystal meth, did cocaine, or had a drop of alcohol on my tongue. And I said, what in the heck's going on? I got 28 years of sobriety, and this has creeped out out of nowhere. He says, hey, your drug use that you've had has done some stuff to your chemical imbalance within your brain that has creeped up on you. He says, it's very common. Don't think that you're alone with everything. And so wasn't sure if I had peace about it, but I faked it till I made it, and I did what he told me to do, and that was to go to meetings, which was nothing more than a men's meeting and sharing from your heart. And I saw opportunity to work with other people. So with that, I want to get into my testimony here. Father in heaven, I just thank you so much for this opportunity to share with these men, and I just pray that you just touch one of these gentlemen here, Lord, that my story would just be from the heart, and that you would be glorified. It's not my testimony, Lord, it's your testimony and what you want to do. And so I just, I pray, Lord, that you continue to move in this room, and that somebody would connect and that their life would change. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, I grew up in a Christian home in San Francisco Bay Area in a place called Pleasanton. My family was members of the Church of Christ. If anybody knows anything about that, it's a little bit different than the Calvary Chapel that I was brought up afterwards. And so all hymns, you got to be dressed in that suit and tie. And my attitude was, what an order, I can't go through with this, And so my grandfather was a preacher in the Church of Christ. He preached in Alabama in an all-black church. He was an evangelist. He traveled all around the country and did tent revivals with my grandmother. Kind of makes me think of a little bit like a Billy Graham that was what he was. He dressed to a T, man. He was a shoe salesman. And then the other side was in Jackson, Tennessee, and he was a song leader in the Church of Christ in Tennessee. And if they asked him to move down and not be song leader, he would change churches. It's kind of like me changing jobs, when I get a resentment. I got the old chip off the old block of seeing that, hey, I've got to do what I'm called to do. And so grew up in the Bay Area. My family was married for 25 years. My dad sold real estate. My parents never drank alcohol until they were 40. I was a traveling soccer player. I traveled all around the world playing soccer on a competitive team. Our record was 115 games. We tied one and lost one. And so it was quite a record in Pleasanton there. I think we held the record still of a great run that we had there. And so my parents always gave me what I wanted. We grew up water skiing in Lake Modesto. And my dad always was at my soccer games, and to the point that it used to embarrass me that he was the only dad at the soccer games, which is kind of me today. You can't keep me away from seeing my kids, play soccer. It's just such a joy. So through the traveling, the soccer parties kind of came around, and my mom started drinking with the cheese and crackers with the parents. We had these semi-pro little kids playing soccer in halftime at the San Jose Earthquake soccer games. And I guess the pride kind of came in that we got these, which I reflect on me today with my kid, that's the colleges are looking at him and it's like, gosh, it's just the pride that's my kid, man, you know. And if any of you got kids, you know, I'm so passionate about that. And my parents started drinking. My mom started having too much fun, getting drunk off of one glass of wine at the soccer party. She was a lightweight. And she got to the point that she was dancing on the tables with some of the people. And my dad, I remember being in the hotel rooms and saying, "You embarrassed me to tears." You know, my mom would just be in a blackout, you know. And my dad said, either you quit the alcohol or I'm out of here. And my mom decided to keep with the alcohol. She goes, "I'm going to find somebody who loves me for the way I am." And so she became a blackout drunk. My dad left, and that just gave me freedom to drink her wine when she had her head turned. And she would complain to my dad that he stole my wine. And I said, I threw it away, you know, when I was drinking it with my friends and doing that. You know, one of the horrible things that happened in my life is that I came home from high school, and my mom was drunk, and she was in her 90 in the middle of the day, and she was upstairs, and she was just at a blackout. And it's not something you want to see your mother in a 90, you know. And she was pushing me and saying, "You go to bed." And I said, "Mom, go to bed. You're drunk. You're in a blackout right now." And she's pushing me in the chest and saying, "You go to bed, Don Jones." Well, my name was always Donnie Jones because my dad's name was Don. So I knew that she was looking at me like my dad. And I said, "Mom, you go to bed." And I pushed her, and didn't push her that much, just that when she pushed me one time, and she went over to the side and fell down a flight of stairs, about 15 stairs, and just tumbled like a tumbleweed. And at the bottom of the tile, she was having a seizure. And I thought I killed my mom. That haunted me for years because I love my mom. She was a great mother for a lot of years, but the alcoholism was destroying her. So it split up my family. Alcohol started destroying my family. You know, I had totaled 3 cars in high school. My last car wreck was I hit a telephone pole going 55 miles an hour without a seatbelt coming home from a party. They took my keys away from me because I was in a blackout, and I said, "No, I'm fine to drive." And hit the telephone pole, didn't manage to get electrocuted, somehow drove the car about a quarter of a mile down to the front of my house with a 77 Camaro, and the front hood was straight up. I woke up the next day and I cried, and I said, you know, somebody saved my life. You know, I can't believe that I lived that. Had a girlfriend that was drunk and couldn't drive her car home from the ball game, so she asked me to drive it, and I was fine. I just had a 6-pack. And so I drove her dad's El Camino, 69 El Camino, and it was his baby. And man, I put the gas on to get that yellow light, and she was behind me following me, and I didn't have my seatbelt on, and he just armor-alled the seat. And I slid across that thing, and the thing was fishtailing, and went up on the curb and took out the whole side of a fence, and totaled the car. And I said, well, this is what we're going to say, that some guys cut you off the road. And you know, we had the big plan for her dad because nobody was supposed to drive her car, and she told her dad that I stole the car. And so the cops came to pick me up, you know, at my house, and my dad said, "You are so on restriction, you're on permanent restriction." And I saw no hope, you guys, and I went in the backyard and I put a rope around my neck, and I said, "I'm going to show my dad, I'm going to show that girl, and I'm going to end my life," you know. And I put that rope around my neck and was ready to jump off, and you know, a voice in me was just saying, "You're crazy enough, just do it now." And another voice was saying, you know, I have a plan. You're crazy. Get off the bench. And today I know that voice was Jesus. And I'm very grateful because I had many friends in high school that had died from suicide and car accidents. And I knew my number was coming. With all the cars that I had totaled, guys had died in a car accident that I was supposed to be with them, but I didn't have enough money to go down to San Diego. And so I knew that my number was coming. The soccer games, I was playing soccer games during the weekday and dropping acid on the weekends. I was a partying jock, and that was my justifying that I was, athletic and a star soccer player, but I held my own. And so things got worse as I graduated. I met a girl. Actually, I met a girl that was my first love, and I dated her for 5 years, and she broke up with me to date a guy in a soap opera. And it absolutely broke my heart. Jake from another world, and the jealousy and the pain of that, and knowing that he drove a Ferrari. And, I would turn on the TV and it would be him. It was just like the chances of me turning on the TV and seeing him was like very often. And I just was thinking crazy thoughts, and the jealousy like I'd never had before. And so the reason why she broke up was because I was starting to sell marijuana and cocaine. And it got to the point that, the cops had their eye on me. And, the guy with the one arm's got the killer blow, was my reputation in Pleasanton. And it used to be the guy with the one arm was a great soccer player, and the guy that a lot of parents wanted their kids to hang out with. And so I got so hurt through that relationship that I just told myself, I'm going to sleep with as many women as I possibly can. I don't even care. I'm going to, it's going to help the hurt that was within me. And so I did that. I slept with gals that I did not want to sleep with, the old joke that, you woke up, and chewed off your arm, for the girl next to you so that she wouldn't wake up, became a true factor with me. And, when I got sober, I said, man, I never have to be with another woman that I don't want to be with, And so I met this one gal, and she was I called her my breeder. It was a gal who I would just have sex with, and there was no commitment and stuff. And she had a 5-year-old kid, and she kind of became kind of obsessed with me, and her kid did too. He would hold his arm like me because he wanted an arm like me. Well, her mom found out that I was dealing drugs, and that tried to get custody of the kid because he was so infatuated, by me. And so she wanted to get custody of the kid, and so that gal came over to my house, and she had a car that her mom co-signed for her, and in a joint bank account, she took $4,000 from that bank account that they had a joint bank account, and that car that was her mom's, and ran. And she says, well, I got to go somewhere. They're not getting custody of my kid, do you want to come? And I said, yeah. So I took the bachelor pad that I lived at, I took the bedspread, put all my clothes in there, tied a big knot, put in the back of the truck with my mountain bike, and I was a happy camper, and we took off and went down to Ocean Beach, from San Francisco Bay Area. I had 3 private investigators trying to find me. And they finally found me down at Ocean Beach. And they said, you either give us the car, give us the kid, or we're going to take the car from you, And so she said, well, take my kid. I'm on a run right now. We've been up for several weeks doing crystal meth. And so I got a job at Chart House down there, and was losing my house. She was going to have my baby, and we've been up all night, and this baby was going to, be, tweaked from the crystal meth. And so I was real broke, and I said, you can't have this kid, and I'm going to have a kid I want something to remind you of. And so she ended up having an abortion, which I know God, forgives me, from that, and I receive it. So she went back to the Bay Area, and I get a job at the Chart House, and it turns out that these guys at the Chart House are sober. And I didn't show up for work, and they were going to fire me. And I said, hey, I think I have a drinking problem. And he goes, the manager calls me, and he goes, well, I wanted you for management. And he says, but I can't have you like this, And he says, why don't you talk to the dishwasher? He's got 2 years sobriety. He says, talk to the bartender. He's got 4 years of sobriety. And he goes, I have 5 years sobriety. He says, you can do it. Ask them how they did it. And I just thought that was the trippiest thing. And it was really a divine appointment. And so I tried quitting drinking, and I moved over to Coronado, made a geographic change, switched jobs to POEs over there, and quit drinking for 30 days. And I thought, wow, I got this handled. I'm not an alcoholic, And so I was doing it on my own, and it was 4th of July, and I decided I'm going to celebrate my 30 days and go to this party. So there was a lot of hot-looking girls there, and I had been working all day, and I wanted to get the party started. And so I went and took 5 beers and did a beer bong and just about puked, and I wanted to get caught up with everyone. And one of my coworkers, we got to scuffling a little bit and kind of wrestling around, and one of his friends thought we were really wrestling and fighting. He came up and took a big step and kneed me right in the side of the leg, gave me a huge Charlie. I mean, he hit me as hard as he could. And now I'm starting to catch the buzz of the beer bong and all this stuff. And I picked up a chair and threw it around and threw it at him, and the whole place cleared out. And I remember one of the girls saying, wow, Winger really changes when he drinks, And so had a friend the next day that said, yeah, I heard about your little incident. I said, yeah, I need to go to a meeting. He says, well, you got to really want it, Winger. I go, I really want it. Take me to an AA meeting. He says, no, you got to really want it. I said, dude, I really want it. Take me to an AA meeting. He says, no, you got to really, really, really want it. And I said, dude, I want it. It's okay, meet me here at 7 o'clock. We'll go to a meeting, And so I went there, and I won a big book for having the least amount of sobriety. And I had to get up and say my name, And I said, my name's Winger, and I'm alcoholic, And I didn't really believe I was an alcoholic. I thought my mom was the alcoholic. And so with that, I got sober, and life was great. I was doing some wonderful things. I moved to Maui. That was the whole reason why I got sober. Lived over in Maui, and we pray for Maui right now that they be safe. Lived over there for 7 years, met some young people, and they got me really involved with the steps. Met a mentor. I went to this home group. It was 7 o'clock in the morning, and at an AA meeting, there was over 100 people there. And I said, well, I'm going to really get serious now. This little church right off the beach there, and I'm going to look for the oldest guy in the room to be my sponsor, And so I found a guy, and I said, hey, Charlie, I said, will you be my sponsor? Here's the deal. I'm living in my VW bus. I'm driving without insurance. And I'm working 3 jobs, and I'm not changing one thing. Will you sponsor me? And he goes, Winger, Winger, Winger. He goes, you're going to come over to my house today. We're going to work the first 3 steps. And by the end of the weekend, by the end of the week, you're going to write down all your fears and resentments, and we're going to go over it. He goes, and don't tell me you can't do it within a week. He says, we are great procrastinators. We'll see you there. So that night I go, oh, shoot, I got a guy that's hardcore. He's getting me on the ball right now, And so I go over his house over there in Maui, and he answers the door, and he's got one leg. And I said, Charlie, you have one leg? And he goes, yeah, I thought that's why you asked me to be your sponsor. I go, dude, I had no idea, And he says, come on in. He says, let's go talk why we really drink. And what the heck does he mean by that? And my head's just saying, oh, yeah, I guess there was a lot of pride, and I wanted to be like everyone else, So this man poured in, he was a Christian man, and he finally said, through meditation, I go, Charlie, how do you meditate? And he kind of looked around like, this is all against AA. And he goes, this is what I say, Winger. He says, I say, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. And I think of his good name. And I think of his goodness and how I can serve him. And you can tell he was going a little bit, he had a lot of time at that time. And I'm so grateful for that, you guys, that he stepped out of his comfort zone with that. And so I kind of got bitter at AA. I didn't go for a long time. And then God just kind of put it back in my heart to be a fisherman of men. You need to go back in there and be a fisherman of men and share what the true higher power is. It's Jesus. And I found it, I started reading the big book and started seeing where my Christianity was coming alive, and where the steps were coming alive. And so, today, Celebrate Recovery. If anybody's ever heard about that, I'm very active in that and have given my testimony. It's all very biblical. And there's a lot of controversy with a lot of pastors about, the 12 steps and this and that. I'm one of those guys that need to take little baby steps. And as my depression kicked in, I realized that I need to stay humble, like I never have been, and seek guidance, And so with that, I've done some really cool stuff. I'm a family man now. I got 4 daughters. Met my wife. I forgot to share with you that I biked across New Zealand and Australia and through my sobriety. And met a gal, and I ended up getting her pregnant over there. And that was my bottom, was through my relationship with the woman. I found myself lusting at the breast and feeling powerless over this young gal, and I knew it was wrong, and I slept with her, and ended up getting her pregnant. I thought she said it was my baby, found out it was not. But through that, I'm grateful for that whole process, because I really hit my bottom and was seeking the Lord. I went down the Coronado Beach coming back from New Zealand, Australia. And I was saying that meditation, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to pray. Just, please, I need a God shot right now. And I need to share this because it's something that was really real. I was down there, and the ocean was going. I was sitting against this big log right there at Dog Beach. And I felt the presence of Jesus like I've never felt before. And it was a vision that Jesus was coming through the Garden of Eden with confidence and smiling and love, just joy coming up. And he sat down Indian style right with me, and he held my hand. And he says, I love you. And the new winger's coming back stronger than ever. And I was stinking blown away. Are you kidding me? I mean, it was so real, you guys. I mean, even to this day, I second guess this vision that was so huge. And I found myself going to church that next Sunday, and I went to Horizon Church down in Horizon with Mike McIntosh, and Mike McIntosh told my story to a T about getting a girl pregnant, and that he had to surrender and just pray for that child, that it would have 2 godly parents, one that was adopted and that he would be. And so his daughter got up, that was 28 years old, and gave her testimony how she came to Christ, and that her dad was a priest, and then Mike McIntosh. And he says Mike McIntosh came up afterwards. He goes, you've been carrying a backpack full of rocks. And he says, it's time to drop the backpack of rocks. And I started crying, and I knew the call, and I went forward and got radically saved. And it was a total divine appointment. It was my story to a T from Pastor Mike. And I found myself enrolled in the School of Evangelism for 9 months. I wanted to learn more about my faith. I learned about the Church of Christ, some of these different cults that we run across. And I'm so grateful for that. After 9 months, I went on a missions trip to Albania with a guy from Canada, Dave Hinsman. And he asked me to be a pastor up in Vancouver, Canada, after that missions trip, and then went to Hermosillo. So I became a pastor right after getting married with my wife. I met my wife in the church serving next to him. She says, you say you want to be a maximum service. He says, come hang out with me. She says, on Mondays, I go down and work with the homeless downtown San Diego. And she says, on Tuesday, I go to a Boys and Girls Club. I mentor a gal. On Wednesday, we have a Bible study at my house. On Thursday, we have a hiking singles ministry. And then on Fridays, we go down to the border and do a clowning ministry. And she says, you want to be a maximum service? Come hang out with me. And so that's what we did. And we also convalescent homes. So I hung out with her, and I didn't want anything to do with the woman. I just wanted to be abstinent and do what I was supposed to do at this time. And I realized that this gal had the gift of evangelism, and I realized that I also had the gift of evangelism. People were coming to Christ left and right. we were getting in the car and praying, and my prayer was that the woman that I would be with would love God more than she loved me. And after 2 years of hanging out with her and serving, she became a missionary to Honduras. Was Horizon North County, Bob Oswald's first missionary to be sent out with Honduras. And I cried and I said, gosh, God, what are you doing? I mean, this woman that I fell in love with, now she's going to be a missionary. And the Holy Spirit hit me and says, remember what we prayed? That she would love God more than she loved you. Because there's a time, guys, that, we're going to get called in the middle of the night to come minister to guys. Is your wife going to be supportive to that? My relationships I had with these other gals were, oh, where are you going? No, you can't go out at night and go reach that guy. And this woman that I had, she loves God more than anything. And so we waited till wedding night to come together. We dated for 2 years and managed to do that. And that was the best thing I ever did, was to wait 2 years to come together on wedding night. I got a chance to do it all over again. And so God has made me a new creation. Today we minister to people going hitting the streets. We still do convalescent homes. I was telling Zach this morning, I made a commitment to my buddy who has a homeless church down in San Diego, that I would go down there with a buddy of mine every Tuesday and witness down there for 4 or 5 hours early in the morning, and then meet him at the homeless church on Sunday. We did that for 6 months, and that was one of the best times of my life, man. The people down there, they know who we are. We didn't always have food to bring them and drinks to drink, but we always had prayer. And I saw miracles, guys. This guy who I hung out was a little bit Pentecostal and had the gift of healing, and I full on saw guys, I would have never believed it if I didn't see it from my eyes, coming out of wheelchairs and walking. I saw guys get recovery from there that were ready to die from overdose. I saw some absolutely amazing stuff happen there. It was the best time of my life. My wife's supportive. She lets me do that. And so God put it on my heart to do a recovery meeting out of my house. So we started with 4 guys out of my house. One guy just got out of jail. I got thrown in jail for drunk in public, but had another guy that was in jail and that could minister to him. There was 4 of us, and we watched Noah's Ark. If anyone's ever seen that, it's a Christian surfer movie, how these Christian surfers, their testimony and how they came to Christ and changed the whole pro surf community. And that planted a seed with us, and we started meeting on Tuesday. That Bible study ran for 6 years out of my house. It got to the point we had 50 people inside of my house, just packed inside there, kids inside of the garage. We moved out of there into a warehouse, which is now Impact Church. We met inside there and had over 600 people come through the rooms in 6 years. And we were consistent every single Tuesday to be there, and had guest speakers and great music, and did outreaches every holiday, like Halloween. We would do like a music fest and stuff. And so it got to a point of a little bit of a burnout, that the guys were really involved. The kids' recovery was really going. Gino was kind of running the group on one end, and I was doing the kids, and evangelism is my gift. So, and I just, people were falling, people were getting divorces, people were dying in the ministry. It was real, heartbreaking. And I just decided I'm going to take a step back and see if God's really in this. The guys who made the commitments of making the coffee and setting up, and they weren't showing up, and I was doing everything and getting resentful, breaking everything down. And I said, man, I'm in the flesh now, And so I believe that my depression kicked off, and so does Gino, when I left that group, from serving the Lord. And so, if my message to you today is that we can't keep it unless we give it away. Just like the autistic kid that came and was making that consistent phone call for me and seeing how I was doing, we may be equally yoked here, but my question is to you, where are you unequally yoked? Wow, that's kind of a concept, huh? Where are you unequally yoked? Somewhere that you could be a light in a dark place. I have a place that's AA. It's a dark place. And I share Jesus, my higher power, I got these little fishing holes that I go to that when I'm in funk, I fake it till I make it. I go to the convalescent home because there's a lot of lonely people there. Even though my depression is kicking in and I feel like I don't want to do it, I kick myself in the butt and say, you got time to spend, get off the couch, go do it. And so it has gotten better. Apparently it's going to be with me, but I feel much better through the help that I have. And these are the tools that I have. I get into the Word. I stay active in my church as an usher and go to my Celebrate Recoveries. Even though I got 28 years, I don't want to say, hey, do you still go to those meetings? Yes. Why? Because I want to gain interest in others. I want to be available so I can serve. Like the autistic kid that called me. He took the time to ask for a phone number and was probably sitting around the house and how can I get out of myself? Let's call Winger, and I'm here. And now I'm have an opportunity to speak. And all my notes that I had here has gone out the window because but you see, that's the way it works. God, I spent some time. I was real excited to share that, but God obviously wanted me to get the message of testimony. Nobody can take your testimony away from you. Everyone has a testimony. Step up and share. And so with that, I just want to say thank you so much for allowing me to serve in the best way I can. If I have to get up in my underwear and get up for the Lord, I'm willing to do that. And there's a lot of times I don't ever feel worthy. I didn't feel worthy to being a pastor, and I was scared to death. But I walked through it, and God used it for me to grow. And so with that, I just want to say thank you for allowing me to share.